afternoon and welcome to the Washington Report with Tea Party Patriots Action. I'm Bill Pasco, Tea Party Patriots man in Washington. Let's get to it. The Senate has joined the House in leaving town for the August recess. The House will not come back until August 31. The Senate will return on September 14th. Last week in the Senate came back on Monday and voted to end debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 6500, the legislative vehicle for a continuing resolution. On Wednesday, the Senate voted to end debate on and then to confirm the nomination of Erica Schwartz to serve as director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Then the Senate voted to end debate on a slate of 74 Trump nominees for lower-level executive branch positions. Then the Senate rejected a motion to proceed to S.J. Res. 187, a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval of a rule submitted by the Environmental Protection Agency. On Friday, the Senate took up H.R. 5334, the Russia sanctions legislation, and rejected an amendment offered by Senator Rand Paul to strike the provision relating to duties on countries that purchase Russian-origin crude oil or natural gas or facilitate sanctions evasion. Then the Senate voted to pass the bill by a vote of 86 to 11. Then, by a vote of 51 to 47, the Senate voted to confirm that slate of 74 Trump executive branch nominees. Then the Senate turned back to H.R. 6500, the legislative vehicle for the continuing resolution, and agreed to end debate on an amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Senator Susan Collins, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. On Saturday, the Senate agreed to a motion to table an amendment offered by Senator Ted Budd. Then the Senate voted by 90 to 6 to pass H.R. 6500, the continuing resolution, as amended. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Then the Senate voted by 50 to 49 to end debate on the nomination of Todd Blanche to serve as Attorney General. Then the Senate voted by the same 50 to 49 to confirm him to that position. And then by a vote of 52 to 46, the Senate rejected a motion to end debate on S. 5271, a bill offered by Ohio Republican Senator John Husted to amend the Help America Vote Act of 2002 to require voters to provide photo identification. And then they were done. Now let's talk about birthright citizenship. On Thursday, President Trump signed 2 new executive orders to narrow birthright citizenship in several circumstances and to enhance the current federal crackdown on the practice of commercial birth tourism. Though the Supreme Court in June struck down the executive order denying birthright citizenship that President Trump signed on the first day of his second presidency, the administration nevertheless believes the court still recognizes the president's authority to restrict birthright citizenship in some accepted areas. The new executive orders apply only to future births in 4 areas. First, children born of foreign diplomatic staff working on behalf of another government while they're in the United States. This order makes clear that the denial of citizenship extends beyond accredited ambassadors to other non-citizen employees of a foreign government. Second, children born to people who are classified as alien enemies. The 14th Amendment has an exception for invading armies, and this simply extends that. Third, those born in U.S. territories, but only if Congress amends the law to end automatic citizenship there. And fourth, children born to mothers who deliberately and deceptively enter the United States for the sole purpose of having their child here at a birth tourism center. The second executive order focuses on birth tourism and orders the Secretary of State and the Department of Homeland Security to issue new rules and guidance to target the industry both at home and abroad to stop it entirely. U.S. law already bans someone from obtaining a tourist visa, quote, for the primary purpose of obtaining U.S. citizenship for a child by giving birth in the United States, unquote. The House Oversight Committee is conducting an investigation of birth tourism. In May, the committee requested information from a company called, I'm not making this up, Have My Baby in Miami. Let me repeat that. Have My Baby in Miami. Most of the expectant mothers who travel for this purpose come from China and Russia, which certainly raises questions. Now to the continuing resolution. The House and Senate have now passed competing versions of a continuing resolution to keep the government funded beyond the start of the new fiscal year on October 1. The House version provides funding for government agencies through December 4, while the Senate version provides funding for government agencies through December 11. The Senate version is also more robust and contains more of the so-called anomalies that the White House requested. Consequently, the Senate version will likely dominate the discussion over the next several weeks. When the House returns on August 31, Speaker Johnson will have a choice. He could simply take the Senate version of the CR and put it right on the House floor and try to ram it through. Or he could tell Senate Majority Leader John Thune that the two should talk, and he'll bring in Congressman Tom Cole, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and they'll sit with Thune and Senator Collins, the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and they'll talk and figure out what the two houses can agree to. Stay tuned. Now let's talk reconciliation 3.0. Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson, the new chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, he took over in the wake of the death of Senator Lindsey Graham, announced last week his determination to move a budget resolution that would unlock a third reconciliation bill in this Congress. The House has already passed a budget resolution directing 4 different committees to spend a total of $95 billion to achieve the committee's ends. Chairman Johnson has not finalized how much money he'd like to spend, but he did say his version of a budget resolution would task 11 or 12 different committees with instructions. This is a problem for Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who isn't just the leader of the Senate, he's also the leader of Republicans in the Senate. He says he wants to protect his vulnerable Republican senators from having to cast the tough votes he knows the Democrats would force in any vote-a-rama that takes place before the November election. Here's how it works. A budget resolution tasks various authorizing committees with different jobs to offer amendments to current law to reconcile the language in the laws on the books with what the Congress's new aims are. And this is important for the process because there's a simple rule in the Senate when a budget resolution is considered. Any amendments are allowed, but only amendments that are considered germane can pass at a simple majority 51 vote threshold. If the amendment is deemed not germane, then it can pass, but only if it wins 60 votes. Now, what makes an amendment germane? For purposes of a budget resolution, it's simple. Is the amendment something that's in the jurisdiction of one of the committees tasked by the budget resolution? If yes, then yes, it is germane, and it passes at the 51 vote threshold. If not, then it needs 60 votes to pass. There are 53 Republicans in the Senate, and for the last few months, that's really been 52, because Kentucky Republican Mitch McConnell has been absent for health reasons. Assuming Vice President Vance is in the chair to preside over the Senate and is therefore available to cast a tie-breaking vote against an amendment in the event that a germane amendment wins 50 votes, Leader Thune can only lose 2 votes from his conference on any germane amendment vote, because any germane amendment that wins 51 votes gets added to the resolution and changes it. And that's something Senator Thune wants very much to avoid. But he's got more than 2 Republican senators running for re-election. He's got to worry about Susan Collins in Maine, and John Husted in Ohio, and Dan Sullivan in Alaska. That's 3. He's going to do everything necessary to protect Collins. That leaves Husted and Sullivan. Is he going to tell one of them that he can't be protected from having to cast a politically toxic vote on a cleverly designed Democrat amendment? That's why Thune would like to avoid having to put his Senate Republican colleagues through the exercise before the election, if he can help it. And he's the majority leader, and he has, as you might expect, significant influence over the Senate schedule. Not surprisingly, despite President Trump's continued insistence that Senate Republicans vote on a budget resolution before they break for the August recess, the Senate did not vote on a budget resolution before they broke for the August recess. And to be honest, even though one of the tasks of the budget resolution is to provide supplemental funding to the Pentagon to begin replacing stocks depleted by the war against Iran, I don't see the Senate taking up a budget resolution when they return in mid-September. When they get back, they're only going to be in town for 2 weeks before the end of September. 2 weeks in the Senate is 8 legislative days. They're not going to be able to hold a vote-a-rama, then pass a budget resolution, then reconcile it with the House, then have all the relevant committees write their portion of the reconciliation bill, then have another vote-a-rama on the reconciliation bill itself, and then pass the reconciliation bill itself in 8 days. It's not going to happen. So we've seen what we're going to see of the budget resolution before the election. That's just a guess on my part, but let's call it an educated guess. Now to the Save America Act. You'll recall that a few weeks ago, the governor of New Jersey acknowledged that 6,600 non-citizens had somehow been added to the state's voter rolls, despite their having informed state officials that they were not citizens of the United States. Since then, we've learned that approximately 75,000 non-citizens are registered for jury duty across the state of New Jersey, for obvious reasons. On Monday, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan and House Administration Committee Chairman Brian Stile wrote to New Jersey Lieutenant Governor Dale Caldwell, the state's top election official, asking for more information on the state's compliance with applicable federal voting laws. They want the information by next Monday. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Capitol dome, the Senate went into recess, and the Save America Act still has not been passed. That's not for lack of trying on the part of the bill's champions in the Senate. That's not for lack of commitment from the Senate Republican leadership. And it's not because the coalition of outside groups supporting the bill decided to give up on it. It's because of the determined opposition of Senate Democrats who continue to block any consideration of it. And not only do they oppose the full Save America Act, which has several elements in it: documentary proof of citizenship for registration, a valid photo ID for voting, clean voter rolls, and prohibitions against men and girls and women's sports, among others. Democrats, when push comes to shove, actually oppose the most simple of all those elements, a photo ID to vote. At 4:36 a.m. Saturday morning, they proved it when every Democrat in the Senate cast a vote against ending debate on a motion to proceed to S-2571, a bill introduced by Ohio Republican Senator John Husted to amend the Help America Vote Act of 2002 to require voters to provide photo identification when they cast a ballot. The motion to proceed is a procedural vote that precedes a vote on a bill. To move to consideration of any legislation, the Senate must first agree to consider the legislation. It does that by a simple 51-vote majority. But a motion to proceed is debatable, and to end debate, that is, to invoke cloture, requires an affirmative vote of 60 senators. So effectively, to get on a bill requires the votes of 60 senators. Back to the motion to proceed to the Husted photo ID bill. All 52 votes for the motion were cast by Republicans. Kentucky Republican Senator Mitch McConnell was absent. That's why the vote total in favor of the motion is 52 instead of 53. And Vermont Democrat Senator Peter Welch was absent too. That's why the vote total in opposition to the bill is 46 and not 47. So, next time you hear a Democrat say the party supports photo ID to vote, call BS and remind them of this vote. Meanwhile, the Save America Act is not dead. Its Senate champions have vowed to keep working on it. Now to the latest on Dr. Fauci. 12 days ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the former director of the National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases, the NIAID, pled the Fifth 111 times during his hearing before the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, chaired by Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. Chairman Paul told Dr. Fauci at the time there would be repercussions. And last week he followed up, holding a vote in committee on Thursday to hold Fauci in contempt of Congress for his willful obstruction of a congressional investigation. The committee voted along party lines, 8-5. Chairman Paul then referred the contempt citation directly to the Department of Justice for possible prosecution. And that's our Washington report for this week. If you've got any questions or comments, please drop us a line at jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. That's jenny.beth@teapartypatriots.org. If you want me to answer a question during the broadcast, just put "for broadcast" in the subject line. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Washington Report. Same time, same channel. Until then, be well and be active.